NFL has decided to put the fun back in the game by easing up on the celebration rule penalty, causing many players across the league to do the jig. Meanwhile, they've also decided to slice overtime by 5 minutes, all in the name of player safety, says the league. So the question is, how will these rule changes affect the on-field product? Dan Labbe is a Cleveland Browns reporter for Cleveland.com. He joined me on Tuesday to discuss how these rule changes will affect the way we play football in 2017. And transitioning to the rule changes, the two that we saw during the league meetings, of course, was the changes to the celebration rule and the short overtime. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on the new rule changes and the way we'll play football this season.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of with the majority of people who think the celebration rules were a little ridiculous to begin with. I think those are things that make the game fun. People enjoy those things. There was no reason to really take it out of the game. And the other thing I didn't like is, teams could get penalized, personal foul penalties for celebrations, things that didn't really impact the game. They were obviously happening on the field, but they were outside the actual action of the game. And I think those are things that the NFL needs to try to avoid. So I'm glad they've kind of loosened the restrictions on celebrations. You ask people things they've loved about the game growing up. It talks about the icky shuffle, the dirty bird, all that stuff. I'm glad the NFL is starting to loosen that up, and I think that's a situation where they've listened to the players and they heard player complaints. The overtime rule was interesting. I thought the NFL would go a different direction and try and kind of fix their, because they had ties last year, and nobody really likes ties, so I thought maybe the NFL would try and come up with a way to have less of them. But, I guess a shorter overtime will probably lead to more ties. I thought it was interesting. I don't know how much it actually increases player safety, to be honest, but, we'll see how that one plays out. But I think that third column in the standings is going to get used a little more than it has in the past, and I wonder if that will sort of cause the NFL to backtrack a little.
Do you think that's good for the game, though, if we have more ties?
That's a good question. Sometimes a tie isn't a bad thing, right? You always hear the saying, it's too bad somebody had to lose this game. Well, there might be games where somebody doesn't lose now, where they end up tying the game. But I think a tie for fans is a pretty unsatisfying outcome. And I think for players, too, I think it's an unsatisfying outcome as well. So I don't know if it's really a good thing that in the long run there could be some more ties.
Hey, Dan, we want to thank you for your time this afternoon and chatting with us on the Two Man Advantage podcast about Browns football and the state of the NFL rule changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.